The hours passed, and still the gang hadn't found any vacancies. All the passengers that had their ferries cancelled seemed to have found all the lodgings there were, leaving the gang stranded. Still, they drove on, stopping every so often to be relieved at petrol stations. It was on their fourth stop that Corpse broke good news. There's a village about another 5 miles from here, and they always have vacancies for visitors. Strange though, because I don't see it shown on any map I can find. Cars sipped his coffee and thought about it. He checked his watch. Well, we'll have a look at it and see. If they don't have anything, we'll just have to camp out in the car for the night. I know, Case, I know, he said, as Casey started looking annoyed. But hopefully we'll find something when there's more light. Now, where do we go from here, Corpse? There's another turn-off at the next crossroads, and then it'll take us along a country road. It should be along there at least. They found the turn-off easily, but the journey became more troublesome. No longer than 5 minutes of driving along this road, a piece of fog fell upon them. The lights from the car only showed the faded shapes of trees and walls that passed them along their way. Casey, Cars and Jane had fallen asleep in the back, what with it being the late hours in the morning. Are you sure this village isn't that far off? Whitehurst asked Corpse. Corpse wiped some condensation from the window and looked out into the dark fog. It should be around here somewhere. A street lamp at least should give us some sort of... Watch out! He yelled as something darted across the car's front. Whitehouse swerved. The others woke in alarm as the car skidded along the road. With a shudder, it went off and slid down the embankment. Lady Grange jittered back and forth as her trailer bounced like a beach ball. Finally, there was a bump and a clang as the car came to a skidding stop, embedded in a ditch. Is everyone all right? Asked Whitehouse. I think so, said Jane woozily. What happened? Something ran out in front of us in the fog, said Corpse. I just hope we haven't hit them. Well, I better go and check, said Jane. She grabbed her first aid bag and with her phone torch on, she went back up to the road. The others climbed out to see what had been done. Thankfully, Lady Grange's trailer was still upright, but the car's front was well and stuck in the ditch, as well as bursting a tyre. Well, that's torn it, said Cars. We'll unhook the trailer and see if we can push her out. You see to the trailer, Case. Corpse, you help him. Once the trailer was cleared, Cars and Whitehouse pushed the car out. No sooner had they cleared it from the ditch, did Jane arrive back. There's no one there, she said, puzzled. You sure? Asked Corpse. Positive. I walked to where your tire skid mark started, but there was no sign of any body or traces of a collision. Well, then it must have been a shadow then, concluded Cars. That's my fault for making you drive this late, Whitehouse. I said the lack of sleep was getting to you. Well, actually, I was quite... Hey, listen, cried Casey. They all stopped and listened. Only the sound of the wind blowing through the old trees could be heard. I can't hear anything, said Jane. I'm sure I heard something. There, can you hear now? They all strained their ears and listened. Very faintly, but growing in volume, were the cries of... Help! Exclaimed Casey. There's someone crying for help. Maybe we did hit something and they fell this way, said Whitehouse. Well, we can't just stand here, said Casey, and before anyone could stop him, he ran off into the fog. Case, wait! Yelled Cars, giving chase. Jane, bring your first aid bag, quickly! Casey darted through the trees, all the while calling out to the person in distress. 1 second the voices were coming from one direction, the next from another. Now they were right in front of him. It's all right, I'm here, he called. The voices echoed. Case, where are you? Called Cars and Jane. Casey's torchlight was growing dimmer and dimmer as they tried to find him through the fog. They're over here, yelled Casey, reaching to a clearing. Just follow my... Ah! Casey fell flat on his face as the ground beneath him gave way. He felt a sudden cold, wet sensation in his legs as he tried to get up. He could just see where his torch had landed, and from the light that was given before it was consumed, was that he had run right into a marshland. Casey had seen many films where someone got stuck in quicksand, and learned the best way not to sink was to keep still and trying to remain buoyant. However, this kind of mire was not so understanding. He had to wear his steel-capped boots today, didn't he? The weight must be pulling him down. Casey scraped at the mud, trying to build up enough solid ground for him to pull himself out. But the mud was like clay, and each movement he made drove him further down. He was now up to his armpits and still going down fast. He could hear Cars and Jane calling him, "Guys, I'm over here! Help!" He could hear their footsteps getting nearer. "Stop!" he called out when he saw them. "Case, stay still and don't move," called Cars. "Well, I'm hardly able to do anything." Frantically, Cars looked for something for Casey to grab onto. A tree branch had fallen nearby. That should do it. Both he and Jane held it out for Casey to grab on. They swore as the weak branch broke in half. "Try something that doesn't break as easily." "There must be something," said Cars, looking desperately. Jane looked around frantically. Then, some kind of feeling came over her, like something was tugging at her arm. She looked round and saw, quite close to Casey, a small line of white stones. She went over and carefully pressed the ground with her foot. The ground was solid here. "Mark, it's solid here, quickly!" she called out as she grabbed Casey's arm. The boy's head had gone under, leaving only his arms waving frantically in the air. Jane held firm to the arm, while Cars pulled at the other. They could feel their efforts were paying off, as with a gasping glug, Casey emerged and was pulled free, back on firm ground. He hacked and coughed up mud and clay from his mouth, while Jane checked that he was all right. It was just then the moon emerged and the fog started to lift. Cars looked up, and from the mist appeared a dark shape. The moonlight shone on its ivy-covered stonework and features before a cloud covered it, and the shape vanished into the mist. "A castle," he said. "A lone castle in the middle of nowhere. Did you see it?" "No, I didn't," gasped Casey, coughing up more mud from his lungs. "We need to get him somewhere warm and dry at once," instructed Jane. "But what about the others?" said Casey, turned to where he heard the voices cry out. But there was not a sound to be heard, except the wind. "I think we're too late," said Cars quietly. "We must have went under while we were getting you out." Both he and Jane helped Casey to his feet and escorted him back up their path to where Whitehouse and Corpse were waiting. They had not long got the wheel fixed and the car back on the road. They were most surprised to see the state that Casey was in and were just about to joke about it when Cars told them what had happened. Their expressions became more sincere. "We'll find this village and I'll try and phone the police and have them search the place in case there is anybody out there," said Cars sternly. "Or a body at least," he muttered as he and the others drove off. Casey's cap settled on top of the marsh, while the inner waters of the mire filled the hole that Casey created, leaving no trace that there was ever a mire at all. Close by, the sound of quick running footsteps could be heard before they vanished into the night.